Yeah, public sector accounting is what we are looking at. Now, first of all, it will be very important for us to know what public sector means. We are looking at all those organizations that don't exist for profits. So zero profits. We talk of zero profits. Of course, this is just theoretically. At the end of the day, most of them are really profitable, but profit making is never their main objective. Yeah, profit making is never their main objective. They are there to issue what we call essential services. They are there to issue essential services. So whenever we talk of PSA, public sector accounting, we are looking at those organizations that are not for profit, not for profit. And I was giving a very good example here. For example, if you look at Kenyatta National Hospital, ladies and gentlemen, Kenyatta National Hospital is really a reputable organization in East Africa. It offers, in this case here, top-notch medical services. But when you go there as a patient, you'll be told to go and queue to some area there. Yeah, you join some queue there, you go and make some payment. The payment will range between 50 shillings to 200 shillings maximum. But the kind of service you'll get from Kenyatta National Hospital, even being able to just see a doctor like this, we know how much it costs. We know how much it costs, ladies and gentlemen, whenever you go to see a doctor in a private clinic. It's very expensive. All right. So at the end of the day, these people, basically the 200 you are paying is for your stationary etc. Otherwise, the main service is actually free. All right. So if you look at, in most cases, like Kenyatta National Hospital, if you were to remove any government transfers to the hospital, any government support to the hospital, those guys will make huge deficits. They'll make huge deficits. So whenever we talk about public sector accounting, ladies and gentlemen, we shall always think about the not-for-profit organizations, which include national government. So if you're an accountant, yeah, so national government, we have county government, yeah, county governments. We have, in this case here, for example, public, primary, and the secondary schools. Yeah, public, primary, and secondary schools. We have parastatals. So many organizations, really. Parastatals. Yeah. We have, ladies and gentlemen, non-governmental organizations here. Non-governmental organizations here. Like which ones here? NGOs, like, for example, the United Nations. So if you look at United Nations, when they are making their financial statements, ladies and gentlemen, they will be able to make financial statements just the way, like how the national government, like Kenya government, makes their financial statements. Why? Because both are not for profit. Yeah, UN in this case, it does a lot of activities which are humanitarian in nature. When, for example, they get to a drought-stricken area, you can imagine how much it costs the UN. At times, in this case, just to deliver that food there, they are looking at this food going to, for example, some areas like Turkana through helicopters. So the expenditure will be up there. So in this case here, UN itself, for it to be able to offer those kind of services, then they would need some support from various governments. But the NGO itself, of course, is a non-profit. It is not for profit organization. Ladies and gentlemen, all these organizations we've been able to list here, they normally use what we call IPSAS for financial reporting. What do they use? They use IPSAS. IPSAS stands for what in full? IPSAS stands for International Public Sector Accounting Standards. IPSAS stands for International Public Sector Accounting Standards. That's IPSAS. You can hear the word public sector. All right. Remember, in the private sector, which standards do we use in the private sector for financial reporting? Private sector, private sector, private sector, we use in this case here the famous international accounting standards or international financial reporting standards. International financial reporting standards. International financial reporting standards. International financial reporting standards. All right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please listen and listen to me very well. Listen and listen to me very well. I can see in this case here, there is a message here, ladies and gentlemen. Motive. Okay, so they don't have any profit motive. I suppose that is what Stanley wanted to say. And I'm so happy because I can see now we are 26 during working time, which really is very, very good. 26 is a good number if I'm talking about the time. Most of you are still working and yet you've created time to be with Mwalimu here. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please listen and listen to me very well. We are saying as an accountant, whenever you hear about private sector financial reporting, IAS or IFRS, International Accounting Standards or International Financial Reporting Standards. That's a private sector accountant. But a public sector accountant, whenever you hear of a financial reporting, always know that public sector entities shall use what we call IPSAS, International Public Sector Accounting Standards. Up to here, ladies and gentlemen, somehow are we together? Are we together somehow, ladies and gentlemen? Are we together somehow, ladies and gentlemen? Are we together somehow, ladies and gentlemen? Are you able to hear Mwalimu? Are we together? Great. Thank you so much. And of course, to get us started there, we must understand what we call IPSAS number 1. International Public Sector Accounting Standard number what year? Number 1. Accounting Standard number 1. Accounting Standard number 1. Number 1. Number 1. All right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, accounting standard number 1, this is what we would want you to appreciate. So I'm sharing some document which I'll be able to give you immediately after our class. Yeah. Great. So IPSAS number 1, there are over 40 IPSAS. Over 40 IPSAS standards, over 40. The very first IPSAS talks about presentation of financial statements. Presentation of financial statements. So how should we have, for example, what we call a statement of financial performance looking like? A statement of financial performance is what we call income statement in the private sector. So then how should it look like? All right. If it is a statement of financial position, which is equivalent to our statement, actually same balance sheet, right? Then how should it look like? And which, for example, statements do we need to have as a public sector entity to say that now we are IPSAS compliant, IPSAS compliant? So we are told here, IPSAS number 1, IPSAS number 1, great. So then we are told here IPSAS number 1, presentation of financial statements objective is to prescribe the basis for presentation of general purpose financial statements to ensure comparability with the entity's previous financial statements and with those of other entities. The scope applies to all public sector entities except GBEs, government business enterprises. Government business enterprises, they use IFRS because basically the government have given those particular entities to the private sector. Yeah. Remember, also government is an investor. So the government will come and invest in companies like KenGen. You see, KenGen. KenGen is not a public sector per se. All right. It's not public sector per se. Why? Because KenGen is able to have their shares, for example, traded at the stock exchange. All right. They are able to, in this case here, run without any help from government. So the government basically invests in it, takes few shares. It could be controlling interest, but the other stake in this case, they give it to the private sector by listing the entity for purposes of raising capital, for purposes of selling stocks, selling shares. All right. So if it happens that this particular entity that the government has taken up, ladies and gentlemen, is doing business, no more trading, then it will be called a government business enterprise. And a government business enterprise shall not use IPSAS. It's a business, it's there to make profits, So it shall not use IPSAS. If that is the case, then because it's a business, it will be able to use what we call IFRSs. Otherwise, all the other sectors in public sector, all the other sectors in government, which fall under what we call public sector enterprises, which are not there for any profit, they are there to offer essential services, they shall report their financials using what we call IPSAS, Great. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the key requirements, components of financial statements. An IPSAS compliant complete set. When I come in this case here to your secondary school, now that we have gone what we call IPSAS accrual. When you call me to come and audit, and I wish very soon the government will be able to give my audit firm, that is Aura and Co, an opportunity to audit secondary schools, to audit. Currently the Office of the Auditor General is subcontracting some services to private audit organizations to assist them because they have so much. So should they appoint Mwalimu here, Aura and Co, certified public accountants, to come and audit your primary school where you are the financial accountant, the bazaar, ladies and gentlemen, if your financial statements will be IPSAS compliant, we expect you to be having a statement of financial position, what basically we call the balance sheet, a statement of financial performance, a statement of changes in net assets or equity. You must have a cash flow statement as per IPSAS number 2. Then you must have what we call comparison of budget and actual amounts as per IPSAS number 24. Ladies and gentlemen, remember on the face of the financial statements, on the face of these financial statements, you've told us, for example, if it's statement of financial performance, we have revenues. You've told us out of these revenues, some in this case here, we got some money from donations. You must put in brackets, under donations, you must put in brackets note 1, for example. And then you will be able to have down there at the end of your financial statements, we shall expect you to have notes to the financial statements. And then, of course, note 1 will be about, for example, that's just an example, donations. And tell us, for example, who the donors were, how much in this case here they gave you. Is that donation coming up with some conditions? Have those conditions been met? Because if the conditions have not been met, then you can't disclose that donation. So we are saying that at the end of the day, we must have notes accompanying the financial statements for purposes of what here further explanations, for purpose of further explanations. Ladies and gentlemen, I would want to pause a little bit. Why? Because I need to celebrate a little bit. We've hit our 30 students number, which really is very, very good. Thank you so much. I would not have gotten that number if it were not for you guys who shared and invited your friends to join us through that link. Thank you. So then we continue. Now, ladies and gentlemen, whenever we talk of IPSAS 1, we've been told in this case here what we need to have. Then we have structure and the content. So for example, the statement of financial position, what must you have? You must have this to avoid getting a qualified opinion from the Auditor General, Office of the Auditor General. You must have this. If it's a statement of financial position, we expect you to have a segment where you capture assets and classify these assets into current and non-current assets. Then we have liabilities, current and non-current. And then we have net assets. You must have those 3 key things. Yeah. And then, ladies and gentlemen, we have statement of financial performance. which can be a function or nature and must disclose this statement of financial performance, which is the same as an income statement. You must basically give us revenues and what year expenses, which at the end of the day, when you deduct this, you'll either end up having a surplus or a deficit. Then if, for example, the government sold a few things here and there and they made a gain, this has to be disclosed. If they made a loss, these have to be disclosed. So, ladies and gentlemen, for us to be able to understand everything that Mwalimu is talking about, I would want to refer ourselves to a past paper. I would want us to go to April 2024, question number 5. 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 Once you get that question, ladies and gentlemen, could you kindly put your thumbs up? Put your thumbs up. Put your thumbs up so that I can continue. Yeah. Put your thumbs up. That's financial reporting. That's financial reporting. And I'm looking at April 2024. April 2024. April 2024. April 2024. Is there somebody who has been able to get it? It was a morning paper, question number 5. So April 2024, question number 5. For those of you who do not have it, you can use my screen and get, in this case here, to do what here? To basically follow through. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is the question that I would want us to do. This is the question that I would want us to do this morning. Yeah, Mazuri Limited. Mazuri Limited. Mazuri Limited. So question number 5. Are we ready for the question? Somebody, are we ready for the question? Are we ready for the question? Are we ready for the question? Please give me a response there. Yeah. Yeah. Now we can do the question together. We can do the question together. Now, ladies and gentlemen, in this particular question, you start by reading the requirement and get to see the number of marks. Yeah. So in this case here, for example, the first question, they want us to give them a statement of financial performance for the year ended 30th June 2023. 2023. And then number 2, a statement of financial position as at 30th June 2023. Both of them are giving me 6 marks. 6 marks. So I will start with a statement of financial performance. I'll start with a statement of financial performance. Remember what Ipsas 1 has told us about this SPI, a statement of financial performance. What it has told us is that this statement basically will have a revenue section and an expenses section. Yeah, and then we shall be able to deduct expenses from revenue to either get a surplus or what here? A deficit. Yeah, so remember the name of this company, not company, but public sector entity. Yeah, the name here is, Ministry of Public Works. The year is 30th June. So we have Ministry of Public Works. Ministry of Public Works statement of financial performance for the period ending, So they've given us a period, very easy things. For the period ending 30th June 2023. 30th June 2023. You guys have a lot of space. You can write there in full for the period ending 2023. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would want in this case here, we get started with revenues raised by this Ministry of Public Works. Could you kindly give me examples of the revenues you expect this kind of a ministry to get? Yeah, remember, because these are basically public sector enterprises that are out there to offer essential services, they can't stand on their own. So they will need the bigger brother to support them, the national government. Right? So we must get transfers from the exchequer. I'm just giving you examples. Yeah, of